Your bike tire goes flat, the soles of your shoes are full of burrs that prick your fingers when you try to remove them. Your dog is limping and your cattle have mouth trauma. Today we are talking about that troublesome weed, Tribulus terrestris, also known as puncturevine, goathead, or caltrops. I'm Christy Gladham and I've worked in biological control for over 10 years. Welcome to the Colorado Department of Agriculture's Biological Control Series in collaboration with the USDA Western Sustainable Agricultural Research and Education Program. Introduced to North America likely in the early 1900s, Tribulus terrestris, also known as puncturevine, caltrops, or goatheads, is an annual weed native to Africa, Asia, Australia, and Europe. The plant grows from a single woody taproot, producing long hairy stems with small opposite leaflets. These are called pinnately compound leaves. They have a similar look to a lot of ferns. In Colorado, these plants don't typically germinate and start growing until temperatures are consistently above 75 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. I'll start noticing plants in late June and early July. The plants grow fairly quick and may start flowering as soon as 3 weeks after germination. Flowers are about 1/2 inch across or the size of a dime. They are yellow and produced singly. Many long stems grow from the central taproot, making a large circular mat 2 to 6 feet in diameter. Puncturevine grows, flowers, and sets seed until frost. The plants cannot survive freezing temperatures, and all individual plants will die off in the winter. Puncturevine only reproduces by seeds. The fruits that contain the seeds are what make this plant so troublesome. Seeds are produced in a woody fruiting body that has sharp, rigid spines, commonly called a goathead or a caltrop. These fruits can break apart into 4 or 5 individual burrs that each have multiple spikes. The spikes of the goatheads can puncture feet, bicycle tires, thin shoes, and the mouths of grazing animals. They can easily get stuck inside tire or shoe treads and be carried long distances. The seeds contained within the burrs can remain viable in the soil for up to 5 years and typically have about an 85% germination rate the summer after being produced. Since puncturevine only reproduces by seed, the best time to target control methods will be as new young plants first start growing. Hand pulling is easy before the seeds form and can be very effective. If you don't want to hand pull, a small shovel or hoe can be used to sever the taproot, which will kill the plant. If plants are dug or pulled before flowering and setting seed, then they can be left in the field. If plants are dug or pulled after beginning to produce seeds, the entire plant should be discarded or destroyed rather than left in the field. Post-emergent herbicides can be used, but it is important to get the plants before they flower and set seed. Given that puncturevine can germinate over many weeks in the summer, consistent removal of the newly growing plants is important and should occur each year for a few years. Pre-emergent herbicides may also be used to prevent the seeds from germinating in the first place, but this will prevent other potentially desirable species from coming up and may be too expensive. Puncturevine typically grows in degraded or disturbed areas like roadsides, railways, degraded pasture, but also especially along walkways or bicycle paths where the seeds can be carried by tires and shoes. Puncturevine is rather easy to control if you have time to regularly check on patches and mechanically remove any new plants once a week or every other week for a couple of months each year for a couple of years. This can be the best way to deal with puncturevine as it prevents those awful seed heads from forming. However, you may have a significant patch of puncturevine in wasteland and have several good reasons to not want or need to fully eradicate the puncturevine. Maybe the time and effort to manually remove plants is not worthwhile, or the seed heads produced in the puncturevine patch will not be causing issues because animals, people, and equipment will not be moving through. Perhaps you just want to reduce the puncturevine population without a lot of input so other control methods can be more easily used. You could also just want to reduce invasion potential for nearby properties and can't remove the puncturevine for one reason or another. For these types of situations, using biological control could be a great choice. As always, before considering collecting biological control agents, please ensure you have the proper permission or permitting to do so, and ensure the biological controls are permitted and allowed in your area. Movement of biological controls across state lines is permitted by the USDA APHIS PPQ and subject to rules and regulations. Puncturevine weevils are known to feed on, but not reproduce on, native North American plants in the caltrop family, so special care should be taken in places where those plants are endemic. There are 2 weevils that were introduced in 1961 for biological control of puncturevine. Microlarinus lareynii, the seed weevil, and Microlarinus lypriformis, the stem weevil. They are difficult to distinguish and share similar life cycles, so I will describe them both together. These weevils are very small, about the size of a sunflower seed without the hull. The adults are a mottled brownish gray and covered in fine hair. They overwinter in the soil litter around the puncturevine infestation. As puncturevine begins actively growing, the weevils will emerge and will begin feeding on the bottom of the puncturevine stems where the stems are touching the soil. This leaves characteristic round feeding scars that can be seen for the rest of the growing season. The adults will mate and begin laying eggs. The seed head weevils lay eggs on the developing seed heads, and the stem weevils lay eggs within the stems of the puncturevine. The seed head weevils will hatch, develop, and pupate all within the seed head, destroying the seeds themselves. The stem weevils will mine their way through the stem and then pupate. Both the seed and stem weevils will create a round emergence hole to exit from the plant tissue as new adults. Newly emerged adults will feed on puncturevine foliage, possibly mate, and then as temperatures drop, they will overwinter in the leaf litter to emerge the following year. In very warm climates, these weevils may have up to 4 generations per year, but here in Colorado, there's typically only 1 generation. Collection of puncturevine weevils occurs in fall, typically August in Colorado. This could vary with your location and be slightly different year to year. The best sites I have found are old stockyards, along abandoned railroad tracks, unused dirt parking lots, or fallow and abandoned agricultural fields. Puncturevine and the weevils used to control it typically like loose sandy soil and hot, dry sites. For collection, you will want thick gloves, sometimes a small spade or shovel, and large cardboard boxes or paper leaf collection bags. Try to find plants that have a large diameter, typically 4 to 6 feet. Smaller plants do not typically have as many weevils, and it will take more time to collect the same amount of plant material. You may turn over the stems of the plants to look for chewing scars from adults. If you are careful and observant, you may be able to see the very small adult weevils on the soil beneath the plant. They are sometimes easiest to spot when they are moving. The seeds of the plant can be checked for emergence holes, and you may crack open a few immature seed heads to find developing larvae. You will want to collect plants that have developed larvae in the majority of immature seed heads. If nearly every seed head has emergence holes, it may be a bit late in the season to collect. When you find a good plant, you can flip the stems over to one side to expose the taproot, and then either hand pull or sever the root with a spade. Take the entire plant and place it in the cardboard box or paper bag. With good-sized plants, you may only get 1 or 2 in either the box or bag. In most cases, the entire plant can be placed in the field you want to release puncturevine weevils. As the collected plant dries out, the developing weevils will emerge into the new area. Be wary of having too much collected puncturevine in an enclosed vehicle. A lot of moisture can be released from the plants, which could be worrisome if your windows and doors are closed. You could also wind up with weevils emerging from the plant material and getting all throughout the vehicle. If you want to prevent the movement of new seeds from puncturevine, then you may want to sort the adult weevils from the collected material. For this, you will need cardboard boxes or paper bags with infested puncturevine, binder clips, potentially some pieces of window screen to fit over the tops of your boxes, an aspirator or forceps, a clicker counter, and release containers for the sorted insects. You will want to prepare the release containers by placing several fresh cut puncturevine stems with foliage for the adults to feed on inside of the cups. With the collected puncturevine at room temperature, either binder clip a piece of screen over the top of an open cardboard box containing the plant, or clip the top of the paper bag containing the plant to prevent the weevils from escaping. Be careful to handle and check on your puncturevine daily, as they are prone to molding. If the plants mold, all of the developing insects will be killed. As the plants dry out, the weevils will emerge and will typically climb upwards towards light sources. You can periodically check your collected plants and use an aspirator or forceps to collect the weevils and place them into release containers. If you want to be more active, you can shake the dried plant material into an empty box to dislodge the dry debris and adult weevils. Then screen this material using large screen sizes to exclude material that is much larger than the weevils, and a smaller screen size to exclude excess sand and soil. That will leave you with bits of leaf and stem material that the adult weevils can be picked out from. Use an aspirator or forceps to place the weevils in release containers and discard the shaken and sorted plant material. The material that is much larger than the adult weevils can be saved to be shaken again the following days. All weevils should have emerged within 2 weeks, or if the plants have completely dried out. Typically 100 to 200 weevils can be placed in a cup for release, and a release can be used per quarter acre of infestation. This will always be a mix of weevil species. It's not worthwhile to try and differentiate between stem and seed weevils for releases. Releasing the seed and stem weevils is incredibly straightforward. You could have just placed infested plants in new areas the same day of collection, which is by far the easiest, or you may have chosen to sort out adult weevils into containers. Prepared releases in cups can be stored for up to 1 week in a refrigerator, but releasing them as close to the collection time is better for the health of the insects. Take your release cups into the patch of Puncturevine you would like to introduce weevils. Usually mid-morning on a sunny day is the best time for release, as the insects will be more active, but any time should be okay. Don't release in very heavy rain, but if it rains after release, it will be okay. The insects are going to be fine. Open the containers and tip the weevils out into the Puncturevine all in one spot. They will disperse themselves throughout the patch, so you should not scatter them. If they are clinging inside of the cup, you can take a bit of grass or soft foliage and gently brush them out of the cup. Weevils have a startle response, which can cause them to play dead. It can be very convincing, but they should begin moving around in a couple of minutes. I like to take photos of the weed patch for future reference, a GPS point, the number and species of weevil released, and the date of release for my records. You should begin seeing the results from Puncturevine weevil release the following year. Feeding damage and emergence holes should be noticeable. It may take a couple of years, typically 3 to 5, to see reductions in Puncturevine populations. Stem weevils can reduce the number of stems produced and decrease both flowering and seeding. With very heavy weevil infestations, individual plants may be outright killed. Stem weevils are usually found in much lower populations in Colorado, likely due to less cold tolerance than seedhead weevils. In warmer places like California, where stem weevils are prevalent, up to 80% reduction in Puncturevine populations has been reported. Colorado has a very high proportion of seedhead weevils. The developing larvae of seed weevils can destroy up to 100% of the seed within the fruit. However, this still leaves the spiky, hard seed head intact. Over time, feeding by the seed weevils may decrease the Puncturevine populations, but will not eliminate Puncturevine entirely. They will also not prevent the spiky, irritating fruits from developing on any plants that grow. Any of the goatheads that have already been deposited or are on the soil will likewise be unaffected. While tillage, herbicide, or mechanical removal of plants can all be very effective controls, they are not typically compatible with either stem or seed weevils. However, weevil establishment and presence may reduce the Puncturevine populations to a point that these other control methods are more easily implemented or afforded. Eradication of Puncturevine from your land will take consistent effort for a couple of years, but can certainly be achieved. I hope this video has given you the information, methods, and confidence to identify, collect, release, and manage Puncturevine seed and stem weevils. There will be a list of references and sources in the video description if you would like to read more about these helpful insects and how you can manage Puncturevine. Thank you for joining me today.